This is a video about TCM and what you can do when you have difficulty staying asleep. In another video, I spoke about what you can do and possible causes why you have difficulty falling asleep. And this is difficulty staying asleep. And many women going through perimenopause and postmenopause experience difficulty staying asleep. Even if they do not have any difficulties or problems falling asleep, staying asleep and getting back to sleep is like, almost impossible. And when I look at my experience, especially last year and way before I was taking hormones and had an idea that all my symptoms were hormonally initiated or at least brought to a maximum, I had not been able to sleep at all. Even while traveling, I had been traveling to South Korea, and from Germany to South Korea, it's a completely different time zone. And usually when I traveled, no matter which time zones I crossed, it took a day or two and I was within that new time zone. When I traveled last year to South Korea, I'd been there for 3 months and it took me about 3 months to adjust to that time zone. I could not sleep. I was tired. I could not sleep. And when I was asleep, I woke up within an hour or two. It was horrible. It was really bad. I mean, gladly it was not for work. It was more for my own personal recovery, but not being able to sleep did not really help personal recovery. And when I returned to Germany, all those sleep problems continued and they showed even more. And it was so bad that I kind of was okay with falling asleep, but then I woke up and I woke up and I woke up again. And when I woke up then for real in the morning, I was so tired that I wished I could have slept for 1,000 years longer. But then the same cycle happened again the next night and I couldn't sleep and I couldn't sleep. And it was just draining my life's energy completely, like completely. That's been restored. I can sleep very well now. I have no problems falling asleep. I sometimes wake up during the night, but when I do, I find it much easier to go back to sleep and have a recovering, restorative rest, which is so essential for cellular function, for our immune system, for how our organs are function, how our brain included in that are function, on our blood flow is functioning, blood pressure, chemical reactions within our body, where we store fat, if we store fat, how we use energy, etc., etc. Sleep is so important. And many people look at exercise and nutrition and think about that's it. But sleep really is one of the essential pillars in there. And there is even saying that if you do not sleep well, it's more likely that you eat worse food than the other way around. If you eat worse food, you might not sleep so well, but the effect sleep can also have on our nutrition, on our exercise, on how our muscles are growing, it's massive. So sleep. And that's why it's so essential that us ladies during perimenopause and postmenopause who are having trouble sleeping, falling asleep and staying asleep, that we do something about it, because it's not just a thing. It's not just part of our age. It's not just natural and we should deal with it. It's really a serious health hazard, not just now, but as we progress into older age. The lack of sleep which we're getting now, we can never recover. And the impact it is having on our entire system and our health, mental health, physical health, all of that combined is tremendous. So, in case you didn't know or wasn't so aware or passionate about sleep as I am, maybe the spark flew over a little bit. And this time, as I mentioned, we'll look into what could be causes why it's difficult for you to stay asleep. Again, through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine, through the lens of the yin-yang concept, and through the lens of the five elements concept. And all of that combined has created an organ clock. So here's a little graph, an organ clock. And it's, depending where you want to start, it starts at noon, goes all the way down and to midnight, and then again it's circling, and the yin and the yang is exchanging the energy. And as I mentioned in another video, the peak of the yang energy births the yin energy, and the peak of the yin energy births the yang energy. So it's really a one system. But in addition to that, there are 2-hour windows along this organ clock, which represent one or several organs within our body, and also one element of the 5 elements of the TCM theory and practice. And I've mentioned that it's super important to sleep, to be in deep sleep between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. because that's the peak of our yin energy, and it's also the birth of our yang energy. So if that is impaired, it's likely that everything else is impaired as well. And that time window, the 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., represents the gallbladder. The gallbladder is part of the element wood. The gallbladder in TCM also represents cellular repair and building of blood cells. So that's like really important. And if you've listened to other episodes, there's so much happening within our cells due to the fluctuations and losses in hormones or overproduction in other hormones, that we have more of a terrain which nourishes inflammation, which nourishes insulin resistance, which nourishes the breakdown of our bones and muscles. And there's so much in our system which is telling our system to break down. And this time window, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., is a time window where our body is programmed to build, and build especially blood cells and repair the cells. So also with regard to that, it's super important to have your sleep at that time. But that's more for falling asleep. Staying asleep, many women, as I've read in books, I heard in podcasts, I saw online, many women in perimenopause and postmenopause have a waking period at about 3 or 3:30 a.m. And that's like, what? There's one explanation, I think it was Dr. Stacy Sims, who said that it could be caused by a sudden drop in blood glucose, which could cause this awakening period. And I will look into that into another episode because I haven't really investigated on that. So that might be a reason that you have too fluctuating blood glucose, which causes then your body to wake up because it's just thinking, I'm stressed, I need to survive, and then brings you into alert mode and wakes you up. So that's possible. That's more the newly discoveries of Western medicine, but this is focused on traditional Chinese medicine. And that period of about 3 a.m. to 3:30, where many women do experience that they're waking up, are also represented to organs and to elements of the 5-element framework. And which is that? So we've had the 11 p.m. to the 1 a.m. representing the gallbladder. Among many things, it's cellular repair and building of blood cells. Then from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m., that represents the liver. The liver, and if you remember, liver also represents anger and frustration, but also compassion. Compassion. So if you feel, everything compassion, I used to, but now I don't. That could be because your liver is impaired. And what's also happening in that phase from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m., it detoxes your blood. Super important, super important. It's also important for the recovery of your system. So very important time frame. If you notice you're waking up between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., it could be an indicator that you have a weak liver function or a weak liver energy. Or if you don't notice that that's the case, look at the counterpart, like the 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. that has a counterpart which is 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. is the small intestine, which is absorbing food and can be a cause for low energy, so that you're not absorbing the nutrients as good as you could or should. So these are correlated. Just as the yin births the yang and the yang births the yin, so, and they have counterparts like at midnight and at noon and vice versa, so does each of those time windows have a counterpart. So if you do not feel anger, compassion, liver, I don't know, doesn't really resonate. But then if you look at the counterpart, in this case, small intestine, absorption of food, that might provide an answer which is really beneficial to you. And yeah. And I was about to say, and you can look into the elements, like liver is wood and the small intestine is fire energy. So your wood energy might not be strong enough to feed your fire energy, and that's why your small intestine fire energy is just too low, so it can't absorb the nutrients well enough. There's so much to dive into this, but I try to keep it with the time windows for now. So we had the 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., 1 a.m. to 3 a.m., and now 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. That's represented by the lung energy. And the lung energy, as you've possibly heard in another video, is represented by the metal element. And it's represented emotionally by grief, sorrow, sadness, and positively, when it's in a good balance, by integrity. So lung energy from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., if you notice you not fall asleep, you wake up during that time window, it's where dreams and memory are nourished and created and restored and organized. It's also where your lungs are detoxing. So as I mentioned, lots of toxins go out through your lungs. And this phase, the 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., it's the phase where your lungs itself are detoxing from the toxins. So it's super, super important to have a good sleep and rest during that time window. But as many women wake up like 3 to 5, I've heard that many wake up at 3:30 for whatever reason, and then they're awake for an hour or two, and then they can fall asleep again for another hour or so, if they can fall asleep again. So that could also be something to be considered, that your metal energy is simply too low. It's not strong enough. And if we look back, what is impeding the metal energy? The metal energy is birthed out of earth energy. And earth energy was if there's lots of trust, that it's healthy earth energy. But if you're worrying a lot, it means it's a sign your earth energy is low. It's also the digestion of your food isn't very well. It's represented by the spleen and by the stomach. So if the earth energy isn't strong enough, automatically your lung energy, your metal energy also isn't strong enough. And if you're waking up at that time, like 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. regularly, your lung energy might be weak, and it might be weak because it actually is a lung issue, but it could also be weak because it's not nourished well enough by the earth element. And if you're looking back at the elements, metal in nature is found in earth. Like gold, silver, lithium, whatever we're looking for, they're found in the earth. And if the earth isn't strong, isn't nourished, isn't healthy, we will not find the metals in there. So that's the reason. It's not specifically that your lungs are not okay, or that you're just sad and have too much grief or sorrow. Maybe you do not have that or overcame those things. Maybe it's more that your earth energy is impaired. And as we had the counterpart for the liver energy with the small intestine, like the 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. is represented as a sister part, so to say, on the 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. by the small intestine. So does the lung from the 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. have a counterpart, counter sister, from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., which is the bladder. And the bladder, as you might have heard in another video, is represented by the water element and by the kidneys. And if your hydration within the bladder isn't strong enough, isn't circulating enough, isn't providing enough flow to your system, then that can have an effect too on your lung energy. So if you notice you're waking up again and again and again at the same time, look into the organ clock. Which might it be? Is it maybe the liver energy? And if you notice, liver, I don't know, I don't really think that it's that case. Look at the counterpart, look at the twin sister opposite the clock, and maybe there you find an answer to what's happening. Like with the liver, it was the small intestine, which could be the culprit. With the lung, it could be that it's not really the lung, but that rather that it's your bladder or your kidneys, or generally the water element, which is impaired and could use a little bit of extra care. Then, just to make it complete, we have the 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. And many might think, yeah, that's the waking up time already. It's not so important. It is super important. Super important. If you've heard Matthew Walker, if you've read his book, Why We Sleep, or if you've listened to him on podcasts or YouTubes or whatever, you know that that window, that early morning sleep is very, very, very important. Yes, we have the deep sleep phases earlier in the night, if we have them, but we have this emotional recovery sleep, so to say, which really helps us process our emotion, project emotion, deal with trouble, and prepares for the day so that we're resilient and strong and capable. That is happening in the early morning hours, especially around that time from 5 to 7 a.m. So it's really, really important to get that sleep, because even if you sleep fine throughout the night, but consistently and permanently wake up before 5 a.m., you might not miss so much of your total sleep. So you might think it's okay, but you miss the majority of this let's say emotional recovery sleep, which is really, really, really essential to build your resilience and your capability to make it through the day, to not be too quickly aggravated, to not be too worried, to not be too sensitive. I mean, it's good to have a degree of sensitivity, but just being so overly sensitive, it's not a healthy thing. So really, that sleep, that early morning sleep, essential, essential, essential. And that's Western medicine. In traditional Chinese medicine, that window represents the large intestine, once again, how we release the food, how we can release the toxins, and it's the end of our digestive system. So if something's wrong there, it will build up to the beginning of our digestive system, even can go all the way up to our teeth or tongue and gums. And if it's not your large intestine, if you notice, not bowel movement, it's nice and good and how it should be, look at the counterpart. And what's the counterpart? The 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. counterpart is the 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. counterpart, and that's represented by the kidneys, once again, the water element. So there you might have too weak water energy within your system, or too weak metal energy within your system, because also the large intestine is represented by the metal element. So that was a first look into the organ clock and which organs, which elements are connected to it, and how they can be indicators for you to find answers and solutions on what you can do in order to stay asleep. Like we've had the solutions for falling asleep better and more regularly and more easily. These are solutions for staying asleep. They are indicators, they're like signposts. Follow these signposts because your body is telling you something. And if it's not that signpost, it might lead you to another direction which can provide the answer. For example, with the liver, it could be that it's a small intestine, or with the lung, it could be that it's a topic with your bladder and with your fluid and moisture in your system. So it's really having the balance of the 5 elements. It's not that fire needs to be the highest and all the other ones don't care. No, it should be a balance so that they can really nourish each other and keep each other at bay. If one element is impeded, all the other elements automatically are impeded as well. And this organ clock can give you indications where you can start with adjusting things in your behavior, in your nutrition, in the tastes and flavors even of what food you're consuming, even of the colors of the foods you're consuming. But that I will look into another episode. So this was the organ clock and possible reasons why you're waking up at night and continuously wake up at night, and possible indicators, signposts, solutions, providing you with the answers and remedies on what you can do individually in order to stay asleep. Because even if it would be the liver, let's say you constantly wake up at, oh no, let's take the lung. You constantly wake up at 3:30 a.m. Then it's definitely the lung energy. But for some person, it might be that it actually is something with the lung, that they've developed allergies or are developing asthma, or that it's too much exposure to toxins in the air or too much dust or whatever it might be, or sadness, depression, such emotions, grief, that just overcame you, because as we're in perimenopause, it's more likely that we are losing more loved ones than we have in earlier years. So it could be that it's your lung energy, it could be that it's the metal energy, but it could also be the 3:30 waking up frequently, could also be that it's connected to your kidneys, that it's connected to your bladder, that it's connected to how you retain moisture within your system. And that simply your kidneys are too weak, and maybe they're too weak because your heart is firing up too much. So it's all interconnected, super highly interconnected. So waking up at 3 a.m. for one person might be an indicator it's the lung. For another person, it might be an indicator, my fluidity system is not optimized, I need to optimize that. And for again another person, it could be my heart, my fire energy is just too strong, which is impairing then the water energy and the bladder and the kidney energy. So it's not the one answer to fit all. It's rather for you to have a guide on where you can find your answers. And I find this organ clock and the concept of traditional Chinese medicine super, super interesting for us in perimenopause, because these are things which are never discussed at the doctors. I mean, it took even years for me to find and understand that all the symptoms I have been developing, and they were really life-threatening. They've reached a point where they really, really, really were life-threatening. It was not just, I don't feel well. It was, I don't know if I live next week. No doctor, whatever profession I've consulted, no doctor ever mentioned that it was perimenopause or could be perimenopause, and that hormones and certain adjustments of lifestyle could really provide remedies and bring relief and bring me back to who I was and am. As no doctor ever mentioned that, no doctor ever mentions the possible connections within the other organs within our system. And while TCM is not specifically addressing perimenopause and postmenopause, as that just has not been in focus, it does address the entire holistic system, and that entire holistic system in itself doesn't really change whether we're man, woman, young or old, but how the system is operating, how it can be in balance or is imbalanced, that can be affected by perimenopause and menopause. So even though it's not addressing it specifically, it still can provide answers and clarity and signposts. Exciting. So this was it, the organ clock and reasons why you might be not falling asleep, reasons why you might be constantly waking up at the same time with regard to TCM, with regard to the 5 elements, and with regard to the organ clock. If you found this interesting, if you found this helpful, please share in the comments. Please add what has helped you to go back to sleep or to sleep for the entire night, which other remedies were helpful, and I'm looking forward to see you next time.